So we're going to turn it over. We're going to go from homes to master plans. If the master plan guys could all come up, please. David, Doug, Heath, and Ted. So Dave, we're sitting in the capital of master plan communities. I think on our rankings, Houston's probably, at one point, probably had 8 of the top 20. Now maybe it's got about 4 of the top 20. I'm going to turn it over to David Jarvis, who is our leader here in the Houston market. David is really the expert on master plans in Houston, and he's going to interview 3 of our clients to tell you the trends that are going on. So David, it's all yours, buddy.
How are you? Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Just like John just said, we didn't invent the chicken sandwich. We didn't invent the master plan community, but we perfected it, didn't we, gentlemen? I want to introduce our panelist. There on the end, Ted Nelson. Ted has been building awesome places to live for 45 years, master plan communities. He started right here in the Woodlands, and after 2 decades, moved on to another famous master plan community called Cinco Ranch and stayed with the property and others as it transitioned through a number of owners. And today, Ted's responsible for 24 master plan communities in 13 states. Wow, that's amazing. And by the way, I quit counting at 25 years, just saying. Heath Melton with the Woodlands Operating Company and Howard Hughes, pardon me. It was Howard Hughes more recently, if you will. So for the first 5 years of Heath's career, he was actually serving in the Army. He is a graduate of West Point, one of those really hard to get into schools. He was deployed to Kosovo and among other awards came home with a Bronze Star, so we appreciate that. After he got back and joined Howard Hughes, he is today the Senior Vice President of Howard Hughes, Single Family Residential Development, including places like the Woodlands, 28,000 acres. Bridgeland, 12,000 acres. Things really are bigger in Texas, if you haven't noticed. And also the newest development, the Woodlands Hills, just to the north of us here. And then Doug Goff, another veteran to single-family master plan community development, the co-president and chief operating officer of Johnson Development. And Doug is responsible for, is it 17 master plan communities in 4 markets? Do I remember that correctly? You did. Congratulations. You've been busy. Well, terrific. So before you all got here this morning, we visited we have a question from the audience. We'd like to know, are any of you going through a midlife crisis? Maybe? Maybe? All right.
That's right. I'm still working on that.
That's funny. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to sit down and join you. So Ted, let's start with you. Would you give us a 5-minute overview of your master plan communities and talk to us about what's special about a Newland community?
Well, you did a lot of my work for me. Is this on? Okay. We do operate in 13 states. We have 24 active projects, which means we have something to sell in each one of them. We've started in Virginia. We're in both North, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Texas, Minnesota, the aberration there, Colorado, Arizona, Nevada, California, Oregon, and Washington. Our communities range in size from 463 acres with 2,700 single-family units, single-family for-sale units in Hillsboro, Oregon, to the 20,000-plus acre Australia project in Goodyear, Arizona, and pretty much everything in between. What makes each of our communities special is that we really begin with an idea that's very simple, to build a better place. And the only true commonality between all of our communities is the fact that we work to make them sustainable. And when we say sustainable, we mean sustainable in the sense that the community will become a better place 10, 20, 50 years from now. We don't just concentrate on the today. We concentrate on leaving a better place. We want it to reflect the needs of the customers, the home buyers, and the overall locale in which it sits. And the single biggest challenge that I think we all face today in the housing industry, and that is of affordability and how to make our products available to a wider range of home buyers.
Great, thank you, appreciate that. Do we have some slides for Heath? We do, check that out. Heath, I think there's a clicker up there, and if you take about 6 or 8 minutes and tell us what's special about your communities.
Sure, I'm going to run really quickly through this. Really just focus on our 3 master plan communities here in the Houston market. So you can see on the map there, the Woodlands where we sit at today, 28,000 acres. Bridgeland just a little bit to the south in the Cypress market, 11,400 acres. Our newest community, the Woodlands Hills, just to the north, about 2,000 acres. So focusing in on the Woodlands first, you know, we talked about the, kind of that suburban lifestyle, and what's really taking place here in the Woodlands is just that. Just looking at population growth, currently just here in the Woodlands, we're at 117,000. Employees just under 68,000, and residents at about 46,000. So those of you who knew George Mitchell and knew the vision of Mitchell, he was the founder of the Woodlands, he really focused on creating 1.5 jobs for every rooftop. So we achieved that many years ago, and that continues to be a driving factor for us as we continue to develop the Woodlands and finish out our commercial properties as well as the residential component. So really, how did we do that? I mean, it's attracting high-quality employers like Anadarko, McKesson, all the hospital systems here. And so you can see total number of employers is just about 2,200 employers here in this market, and creating that tax base about $22 billion just here in the Woodlands alone. So great achievements for the Woodlands. I know a lot of you guys know Tim Welbus. He's in the audience. He's been with the company for about 27 years, so very fortunate for him to kind of craft and curate a lot of the stuff that happened here in the Woodlands. As we look at some of that kind of urban setting, the newest that we've added, hopefully you guys got a chance to be out and around the Woodlands, but Hughes Landing, that's the newest part of our development in the town center that we've added. Here, kind of pictured on the slide, you'll see Restaurant Row. That's adjacent to One Lakes Edge, which is 390 units of multifamily with shopping and retail below. We have the Whole Foods adjacent to that property. Also a couple million square feet of office space right next door where ExxonMobil, they take a building and a half. We have the Embassy Suites right in that little center. So that really services the business community during the daytime. And it's not your typical Embassy Suites. When we talk about modern, fresh, current, it really replicates all that stuff in that Embassy. And that services the community on the weekends. We have a lot of traveling sports that come to the Woodlands. So that ADR for that Embassy is one of the top in the nation. As we look at just kind of the urban setting adjacent to the suburban setting, we have East Shore that's really nicely placed right adjacent to it. So that lends itself for some of the highest price points here in the Woodlands just because of its location, but also the focus on design. So you can see the design here, it's really special, as well as the architecture that lends itself for that kind of higher profile buyer adjacent to the town center. Unrivaled quality of life, you know, we talked about the shopping, the retail, everything that's here, over 11.5 million square feet. Hughes Landing, as we look at Cynthia Woods Mitchell Pavilion, it's one of the top performing outdoor venues in the nation. It draws a big crowd for people here. You know, the lifestyle and the shopping here, we have Market Street, we have Woodlands Mall. A lot of malls are starting to struggle. This mall is still very vibrant, and I think that's a lot of what's taking place is rooftops ring retail and then all the shopping and the job places that have taken. Hospitality, you know, we talked about that already. The Westin, the Embassy, and the Woodlands Resort and Conference Center. Those are all ones that we own and operate. Again, it services that business community, but then on the weekends for the weekend travelers. The Woodlands Waterway, hopefully you guys got the chance to experience this. A really nice setting. We used to have kind of boats that would taxi you along the waterway. Those kind of went out of operation last year, but we still have a trolley system, and it's really a nice pedestrian corridor to get people in and around the town center without having to really engage with traffic. Big focus on health and wellness. I know Ted talked about making sure that communities are sustainable. That focus on health and wellness is huge for us. We program health and wellness in our retail centers. We just installed our 220th mile of hike and bike trails here in the Woodlands. Boat houses that get people out on the lakes. We have Ironman North of America housed right here in the Woodlands, as long as the Woodlands Marathon and Triathlon. So that big focus on fitness really resonates with all of our residents. You know, art and culture, every time we sell a commercial property, and now that we're not selling a whole lot of commercial property, we're implementing that ourselves. There's funds that are taken in by an art fund. And so we use those funds to create art and sculptures throughout the entire Woodlands. art benches along the waterway. So just another way of changing the dynamics of the community. And then world-class medical facilities, we talked about that already. We're just now adding MD Anderson, and so as we think about kind of that suburban environment, all the folks that live here in the Woodlands, they no longer have to travel down to the medical center. They really have everything they need here, you know, minus a big surgery or heart transplant or anything like that. And then that takes us down to Bridgeland, down to the Cypress Market. Again, that focus on art. You see we incorporated that into our entry monumentation with the windgrass that's there on the left side. Constantine Dipomopoulos was our artist. He's out of Australia. So those are actually kinetic pieces that move with the wind, so that connection to nature as well. You know, as we look at product segmentation, I know we've talked about that, and you can see some of that influence that was talked about in the previous presentation. We've partnered with Beazer Homes on this product, focused on modern farmhouse. We're really the first ones in our market space to bring this product to market. Recently just opened that new neighborhood, have been extremely successful, opening in end of December, 14 sales in the first 2 months. So really happy to bring that to market. Again, we'll talk about traditional neighborhood design. We've incorporated that in Bridgeland and in the Woodlands. We'll continue to incorporate that to make sure that we're hitting those different niches within the market. And then last but not least on product, as we opened up Parkland Village, we focused on the exterior elevations of our homes. Highlands pictured on the left, painted brick, really makes a statement, really resonates. And then on the right is Trendmaker, a little bit more of a modern or moderated modern elevation. Both those have resonated really well with the consumer. It's a memory point for anybody that visits our communities, and I think it makes us stand out just by doing that with our builders. And then as we talk about kind of the evolution of amenities, there's always been a big focus on wanting to offer amenities that give people the opportunity to connect with friends and engage with nature. Pictured in this picture here is our boathouse in Bridgeland. It's on a 140-acre setting. All of our residents, just through their HOA fees, get the access to this boathouse. They can check out kayaks, canoes, and enjoy that 140-acre lake on paddle boats as well. So that dedication to open space, I think we all do it on that master plan community side, and it's important for long-term sustainability. And then, you know, I know there was a question about our pools gone. Pools are still very relevant. We'll continue to do those. On the left is just our lazy river, a deep water element with a really nice rope swing that you can plunge into the deep water. But then on the right, we're incorporating nature even into our play structures. So we have a uniquely designed play structure that looks like a dragonfly, and that happens to be the icon for that new village in Parkland Village. So named Dragonfly Park. And then again, we'll continue to build those pathways throughout the community. We'll have over 100 miles in Bridgeland when it's all said and done. And then as we think about creating memorable experiences, this is something that a lot of us do, and a lot of us do it very well. But again, it's about how do we market our communities? How do we create memorable experiences through events and placemaking? We have two household ones that we do in Bridgeland. One is Nature Fest. The other one is Halloween Fest. So how focus on your little four-legged family members. Through those two events, we attract about 15 to 20,000 people into the community to kind of experience life in Bridgeland. And then we also have our monthly events, whether it be farmers markets, Friday Night Bites, that's kind of a food truck extravaganza. Last year at Nature Fest, there was quite a bit of buzz that generated about our headline act, and my wife was really excited, and I was like, well, you know, we've done this before, why are you so excited? A lot of buzz kind of populated on social media, and then this happened. Right, I understood it. When I saw this guy, kind of a big old hunky man with a big snake around his neck, that's Dr. Anton. Really got the ladies excited. That's our demographic. They came. I don't even think they saw the snake around his neck, to be honest with you. We often have kids that populate those first two rows. Not last year. It was all the moms and ladies. So really good opportunity to kind of make memories. And then our high-flying dogs there, the Canine Stars at Halloween Fest. And then our monthly gatherings that we talked about, farmers markets, Friday Night Bites, and then that takes us to our last community, the Woodlands Hills. Just touched on some of kind of that modern flair in our architecture. We've incorporated that into the elevations of our activity centers. And then also one key element that we're adding into this community is dedicated bike lanes. So focusing on pedestrian connectivity, that's not being done, at least in Montgomery County and any of the communities. So I think we'll be first to market with the dedicated bike lanes. All right, and with that, Howard Hughes Cares, you know, just making sure that we're always connected to the community and we're always giving back through charitable contributions. So,
Wow,
thank you.
outstanding. Well, Doug, I don't think I'd want to follow that.
Not really.
If you would, you talk a little bit about the Johnson communities that you manage, and again, tell us what's
Sure, be happy.
special about what you're doing.
Is this on?
It's on.
Okay. Okay. David, how do we make this work?
Got some slides for us, guys?
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go. From a big picture standpoint, like Ted and Heath, we've got numerous projects under active development. Today we've got 18 communities, 14 in the Houston area. As you can see, we sort of got it surrounded. There's 2 up in Dallas-Fort Worth, 1 big one in Atlanta, and we just bought something in Austin in February. This represents about 45,000 acres with entitlements for in the neighborhood of 79,000 single-family and multifamily units, and it also has provisions for about 16.5 million square feet of retail and commercial space. Last year, we're proud to say we had 6 of our communities in the top 50 best-selling in the nation, and quite proud of that. Somebody once said a good market will make you look smart. Well, we're in the number 1 and 2 markets in the country, in Dallas-Fort Worth and Houston, so I won't take complete credit for all that. Everything starts with the land itself. We create these places to celebrate life. That is sort of our strategy. And in doing that, we've got great relationships with leading home builders and commercial partners. As you can see from the left-hand side, you probably recognize many of the local, regional, and national home builders that we do business with. And on the right-hand side is a collection of various developers of office space, retail, commercial, grocery-anchored centers, things of that nature, as well as multifamily developers. Again, our focus is on people over place, and like Howard Hughes Cares, we have Johnson Cares, which is basically it's a unifying theme that we have where all of our communities give back through employee service, and we generate activities that provide donations to charitable organizations in and around our communities. We're proud to say last year the Greater Houston Builders Association recognized Johnson Development as Humanitarian of the Year for those efforts. Again, we all have our amenities. The upper left is a monster club that we just put on the ground in Sienna Plantation called Sawmill Lake Club. On the right is our Cross Creek Ranch facility with a observation tower where you can see downtown from up there. Bottom left, we too created a lazy river in our Jordan Ranch community. On the right is our Viridian community up in Arlington, which has a giant lake with rowing and kayaking and sailing and all those sorts of activities. In addition to the amenities, we do focus on nature. Upper left is Cross Creek Ranch. That is what's called Fluellen Creek. It was a nasty little stream about 10 feet wide that we've taken now and made it roughly a football field in width, and have natural plantings that attract all sorts of birds and fauna, as well as all the natural plantings that we've placed, as well as I think there's about 25,000 trees we've put down the middle of this thing for a habitat. And again, trails. It's the number 1 amenity from all of our surveys of our residents. We all have them. That represents both Wood Forest and Riverstone. And in the bottom right is our village farm in Harvest Green, a community we brought to market just a few years ago off the Grand Parkway. And it has met with tremendous success. We've got about a 300-acre working farm that provides what's called CSA, Community Supported Agriculture Program, where our residents can purchase weekly baskets of fresh produce, our herbs and flowers and vegetables, and it's all organically grown, and it's very, very popular. It's great for our families who our kids can learn where their food comes from and actually participate in the growing process. Another, I think, distinguishing characteristic of developers like ourselves is lifestyle. I mean, it is a key to generate activities for every demographic in our communities. It's sort of year-round activities. You can see the listing of festivals, block parties, community dinners, educational workshops. It's what brings our families and communities together to meet each other and create a sense of place. And then lastly, marketing. Gone are the days of mass marketing of newspapers and radio and TV. Today, we implement strategic marketing efforts to be able to target our buyers much more effectively. And we do this through several different technological advances. We have a builder contract management program where it's a portal. Our builders, sales teams, and managers can communicate with us. We have tracking technology where artificial intelligence driven allows us to collect real-time data in PR and market sentiments. Upper right, it's what's called Alicent. It's an app that we have for all of our communities, and it's fully branded. It allows our residents and prospects to click on this thing and see everything that's going on in the community. They can reserve places in various workshops or whatever. And it allows us, again, to personalize our communication with each of the residents. And that's a brief introduction of us. Our slogan is creating environments that celebrate life, and it's something that we take a lot of pride in.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Ted, let's go back to you for a moment. Let's talk about the evolution of the master plan community amenities. As we've said already in your presentations and discussion, that it's not all just about the pool anymore. But I remember when you went to Cinco Ranch and kicked that off, you built a beach club in Houston, Texas, and that may have been the beginning of the nuclear proliferation of amenities at master plan communities in our market. Talk to us about the evolution of amenities at your MPCs.
I think it was the proliferation of the nuclear amenitization of master plans. One of the things that we take very seriously as we look at the history of our master plans and master plans in general, and that is, if you build an amenity, it's got to be sustainable. I keep going back to that word. I think 30 years later, the beach club probably isn't sustainable. And I think we have to take those things very much into account. Today, the pool is clearly still very important, resort-style amenities, but with each of our communities, we really drill down to the consumer and what the consumer wants, and in each community, we have multiple consumers. So we may have an array of amenities throughout the community. The one single thing that, and each one of us has touched on it, and that is connectivity, pedestrian connectivity. Trails are the most used amenity in any community, in any place, anytime, anywhere. The other connectivity, though, that is very important from an amenity standpoint is technology and connection to technology and how you deliver that to the consumer. It's extremely important today. So maybe our amenities are perhaps a bit simpler today, but they're much more targeted today to who's buying and living in that community.
Isn't that interesting? Everybody wants the trails. Everybody wants an opportunity to be outside. That's awesome.
Very much outside and to see and be seen. I think one of the things that we see used more and more are indoor meeting places where people can get together, whether it's a formal meeting, a Cub Scout meeting, or whatever, or just to drop in, go to the fitness facility, and see neighbors, have an ability to chat and interact with each other.
Oh, that's fantastic. Doug, let's go to you next. Tell us a little bit about how you identify and keep up with development trends that you want to either participate in or set as a new trend, just like Ted did years ago.
I think, just staying in touch with the market, staying involved in our industry. The Urban Land Institute is something that I think most of us are all involved in every meeting. In fact, there's one coming up in Nashville that you walk away with some pearl of wisdom that you want to implement into your community. There's just a continual learning process, and it's, I'm always saying I'm not above stealing good ideas and calling my own. Well, that's what happens when you go to these kind of conferences, and we come home with these great ideas because you're among the best of the best. There's people that are doing what we do all over the country, and so I guess the best way to answer that question, David, is just staying in touch with everything that's going on out there in the marketplace.
Yeah, just like we're doing here for 3 days. That's exactly right.
There you go.
Heath, anything to add about trends?
Yeah, I would say that Ted and Doug both touched on it, but one of those trends, and it might be a little bit more simpler, is just when we focus on wellness, and part of that trail system's part of that, but how do we communicate that? How do we market that with our residents? Focus on sustainability and resiliency. So again, as we look at sustainability, it's not just some of the infrastructure that we put in place, but things like utilizing reuse water, purple pipe system. We water all of our common areas with reuse water, and that's something that's underground that the consumers that are driving through the community, they don't see. So how do we tell that story appropriately and connect with that millennial generation? They're really big on kind of sustainable practices, resiliency, and then also focus on the wellness and education. So I think as we touch on all of our amenities, how do we tell the story effectively to resonate with today's consumer?
Okay, cool. Ted, how do you create experiences? We hear, especially for the millennials, that they'd rather have experiences than stuff. So how do you give that generation experiences in a master plan community?
Well, again, like my two friends here, one of the most important things that we do as the master developer is to set up the homeowners association, which is truly grassroots government at the absolute lowest level. And I can show you communities within cities. Cities are great, but the communities that have strong HOAs provide much more sustainable places. With HOAs, it provides the opportunity for people to connect, whether it's through various clubs or through governing meetings. And we provide the interior space today that 10 years ago we might not have provided. Interior spaces are becoming much, much more important than they ever have been, largely because of the aging boomers that like to get together and the millennials who seem like they're always together.
That's interesting. So I had a very high level of awareness of the back to nature, but I really had kind of fallen behind on the meeting space that's become so important. So I appreciate that.
Really can't understate that. I don't think we would attempt to build a community today, with very few exceptions, that didn't have some common area, indoor space that's available to the community.
Wow, that's
I
interesting.
want to make one more comment, if I can.
Yeah, please.
On trends, and that's on the home side. We all face the biggest problem in our industry, and that's affordability. And the fastest way for a home to become more affordable is to make it smaller. And we're starting to see that trend. And I really implore our builder friends and builder partners to take that seriously, because the concept or the ability to own a home is getting out of reach for a lot of people today.
And that gets to our next question. ADU is an acronym that I learned yesterday. Affordable, somebody help me, dwelling unit? Attainable dwelling unit? Okay, there's more than one definition. I can hear about 5 out there. So y'all decide on one and let me know. It is a big issue. Affordability, attainability, it really is. One of the things that came out yesterday from the architects are what I would have called the mother-in-law suite, until somebody said that's not PC anymore, so somebody's going to have to teach me what to call that. But not just for the mother-in-law, but for the rentability. And whether it's a 6 to 12 month lease for the millennial who wants to take in a little more cash to help them pay for their mortgage, or the VRBO. As master plan community developers, how do you feel about the VRBO traffic or the renting out a room in a house? Do you have any opinions about that, Heath?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start off just, I know there's in a lot of municipalities that have kind of taken a stance on kind of that VRBO approach. One, just to make sure they're not inundating the residents that are adjacent to them. And two, for hotels, because when you go through that VRBO process, they were kind of missing out on that hotel tax. I mean, here in the Woodlands alone, short-term leases, kind of long-term leases are kind of governed through the HOA or through the township, and they have some, I wouldn't say it's an ordinance, but they have some guidelines on how they approach that. Along with all of our master plan communities, that's in our governing documents on how we approach it. You know, I think as the communities continue to grow, it's something we're gonna have to explore and see if we can get a comfort factor with some of those approaches, especially with this new generation and that focus on wanting to be able to offer that. We do have a lot of builders that offer kind of that, whether it's the mother-in-law suite or they have kind of a garage apartment above their garage as an option, and that's becoming more prevalent with a lot of our builders, especially on a national perspective. So it hasn't really hit our market heavily here in the Houston market yet, but I think it's probably in the near term coming.
Okay.
David, there's one trend I see going on is single-family homes for rent. And it's a growing trend throughout the country. Our capital partners probably is the 4th largest owner of residential homes that they rent out.
Yesterday.
Yeah, and about 16,000 units or so. And we've seen this now happen in other major markets like Phoenix, where DMB has opened up complete neighborhoods that are strictly single-family homes that are for rent. And it integrates itself into the community very well. Obviously, the design and the construction and of it needs to be compatible with what else is in the community. There's always some initial pushback from your existing residents that these are renters and not owners. But at the end of the day, every single homeowner probably was a renter at some point in their life. So,
right.
But my thought really here is that these neighborhoods actually could end up being and appearing better because there's a common maintenance of all the grounds and the buildings and everything else. So, you know, I live in a neighborhood, my neighbor across the street will cut his grass once a month. And it was like, really? So anyway, that stuff happens, but it won't. And it can be an asset to master plan communities. So that's something that we're looking into very hard.
Yeah, it's obvious you're considering those. I can't wait to hear more about that as you get deeper into that. All right, we're on our last minute. I want to ask one last question because it could be controversial. Do any of you have a question for each other?
Doug, what's the next community you're going to buy?
I can't tell you. One other point I want to make, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but one of the things that as Ted mentioned about homeowners, and we have what's called a community service foundation in all of our communities, which is basically a nonprofit organization for the purpose of providing perpetual funding of improvements to the community long after we're gone, and it doesn't put the burden on your homeowners association for special assessments. And what it is, it's funded through a transaction fee. Every home that's closed, about a half a point goes into this charitable organization, and it focuses on technology, on the nature, activities in the community, and so it's a source of funding for actually additional amenities that may not have been constructed that the homeowners find over time as things change. They want to add something to the community. So anyway, the foundations are a big part of a lot of the things that we all do.
That's outstanding, and you've been doing that for a very long time, successfully, I might add, in case everybody wants to know. Real quick, what I heard was lifestyle programming is not only big, but very, very important. You're all very good at that. You're creating a place to celebrate life. And one of our master plan communities has created 1.5 jobs for every rooftop. Phenomenal. That, if you want to know the numbers, that would be about 70,000, about 60,000 jobs on 40,000 rooftops in round numbers. Let's see, what else do we get? Buyers are looking for a place to engage with friends and with nature. And one of the ways you're doing that is you're incorporating nature into your playground. So I want to thank you all very much for being here today.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, David.
You bet, man.